Have you ever wondered if it is truly possible to know who someone really is? We live in a world where people carefully craft the way they appear. Social media filters, polished resumes, polite conversations at dinner parties. Everywhere we turn, we see masks. But behind those masks, who is the person that stands before you? If you think about it, most of us have already experienced the confusion of misjudging someone. The colleague who seemed reliable but betrayed your trust. The friend who was warm in words but absent in action. The partner who promised everything but delivered nothing. These moments leave us with a lingering question. How can we see beyond appearances to the truth of character? Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine thinker often reduced to a symbol of manipulation, actually left us a surprisingly simple key. He suggested that to discover who a person truly is, we should not focus on what they say, but rather on what they do when power enters their hands. This insight sounds obvious at first, yet it carries profound consequences. Words are cheap. Actions under pressure are priceless. Think of someone you know who speaks often about kindness and generosity. Now imagine that person in a position where they must choose between their own comfort and helping another. Do they step forward, or do they retreat? In that moment, their true nature is revealed, silently but unmistakably. It is not in declarations, but in decisions, that the soul of a person comes into view. And here is where you, the listener, enter the picture. How many times have you trusted words more than patterns of behavior? How many times have you ignored the quiet signals in favor of the charming speech? If you pause and review your life, you may realize that the signs were always there. You just did not give them the weight they deserved. This video is about sharpening your vision, about learning to see beneath the surface. Imagine the strength you would gain if you could discern character more clearly. If you could stop being seduced by appearances and instead read the truth written in actions. That clarity would change not only the way you relate to others, but also how you reflect on yourself. Before we dive deeper, I want to ask you, have you ever uncovered the truth about someone only after being disappointed? Share that story in the comments below. And if you are ready to journey with me into this exploration of character and power, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because what we will uncover may change the way you see people forever. What if you could enter a room and, within minutes, see people for who they truly are? Imagine how much suffering you could avoid if you could distinguish the friend who will stand by you in hardship from the one who only stays while the wine flows and the music plays. Think of the wasted time, the broken trust, the disappointments you could spare yourself. Instead of constantly guessing and hoping, you would walk through life with the ability to see through the fog of appearances. Now picture yourself in relationships, personal, professional, even romantic, where you no longer fall prey to charming words or impressive titles. Instead, you are anchored in a deeper awareness, one that recognizes the subtle signals of integrity or corruption long before they fully show themselves. Would that not give you a sense of freedom, a sense of strength, even safety? Machiavelli's idea is not just about exposing others, it is about freeing you from illusions. Most people operate on the surface. They believe the first story told, they accept the promise without waiting for proof, they confuse eloquence with honesty. But what if you trained yourself to wait, to observe, to test? To say, I will not judge you by what you claim about yourself, but by how you behave when the stakes rise. That shift would place you miles ahead of those who keep being surprised by human inconsistency. Let us take this further. What if you also applied this principle to yourself? Consider how often we judge ourselves by our intentions rather than our actions. We think, I meant well, or one day I will be more generous, more disciplined, more courageous. But the truth of who we are is never in our intentions. It is always in our choices. Imagine if you began to measure yourself not by what you dream of becoming, but by what you actually do today. How different would your self-perception be? This is the seed of transformation I want you to hold. Life becomes clearer, richer, more honest, when we learn to see action as the ultimate language of the human soul. And if you dared to live in such a way, if you cultivated this vision, you would not only protect yourself from deceit, but also discover the kind of person you are becoming. Close your eyes for a moment and picture that version of yourself. Someone who sees clearly, who chooses wisely, who lives truthfully. How much lighter would your heart feel? We have been taught since childhood to listen to words. Parents, teachers, leaders, all encouraged us to pay attention to promises, declarations, and speeches. Yet, when you stop and reflect, how many times have words deceived you? The colleague who swore loyalty, but left at the first opportunity. The partner who promised forever but was gone within months. The friend who said, "Call me anytime," yet vanished when you truly needed help. If we are honest, words have failed us far more often than they have guided us. Here lies the disruptive truth. Words are rarely the mirror of reality. They are the tools of performance. Anyone can say, "I value honesty," while hiding lies behind their back. Anyone can preach about generosity, while clutching their resources tightly. It is action, consistent, often inconvenient action, that tells the truth. This realization shatters the comfortable illusion many of us carry, that people reveal themselves through what they say. The reality is harsher, but also liberating. People reveal themselves only through what they do. Think of it like this. If words are smoke, actions are fire. You can be enchanted by smoke, its patterns, its colors. But smoke disappears the moment the wind changes. Fire, on the other hand, burns, warms, and destroys. It cannot be faked. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. And here is where the shock deepens. It is not only others who hide behind words, we do it ourselves. How often have you told yourself, "I will change," yet continued in the same patterns? How often have you declared, "From now on I will be different," only to discover that when pressure comes, you fall back into the same old habits? That uncomfortable mirror forces us to recognize that we are not exempt from the same illusion we blame in others. This rupture with the normal way of perceiving people can feel unsettling. It strips away our excuses and forces us into a deeper level of honesty, both with others and with ourselves. But it is only by breaking illusions that we can build solid ground. Seeing this truth may hurt at first, but it protects us from far greater pain later. Ask yourself, where in your life are you still clinging to words, your own or those of others, while ignoring the undeniable evidence of action? This is the point where transformation begins. To ground this reflection, let us return to the figure who inspired it, Niccolo Machiavelli. Though often misunderstood as the champion of manipulation, Machiavelli was in truth a relentless observer of human behavior. Living in Florence during the turbulence of the Renaissance, he witnessed firsthand the games of power, the collapse of trust, and the brutal consequences of misplaced faith in appearances. His writings, especially The Prince and the Discourses, reveal a man who understood a sobering reality. When power enters the room, masks fall, and the essence of a person emerges. But Machiavelli is not alone in this recognition. Centuries later, philosophers and psychologists confirmed what he observed. Friedrich Nietzsche warned us not to be fooled by noble words, for they often mask hidden desires for control. Modern psychology, particularly the work of Daniel Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow, has shown how easily we are seduced by the halo effect, our tendency to let one appealing trait blind us to deeper flaws. Even literature echoes this warning. Shakespeare's Othello is a story of a man destroyed by misplaced trust in eloquent lies, while true loyalty is revealed in quiet, consistent acts. When authority, culture, and science converge on a single truth, it deserves our attention. The idea that actions carry more weight than words is not a cynical suspicion. It is a principle that stretches across history, philosophy, and human experience. And yet, how often do we live as though the opposite were true? Here's the paradox. We admire thinkers like Machiavelli, writers like Shakespeare, psychologists like Kahneman, but in daily life, we still fall for charming words. We still ignore the evidence of action. We still invest in appearances rather than substance. Why? Because illusions are easier. Words flatter us, comfort us, give us hope. Actions, by contrast, can wound us, force us to accept truths we would rather not face. But if we desire a life of depth and maturity, we must resist the seduction of words and demand the clarity of actions. Authority supports this truth not to make us suspicious of everyone, but to invite us into a wiser way of living. By aligning our perception with the lessons of history, philosophy, and psychology, we gain the strength to see clearly where most remain blind. So ask yourself, whose words are you still holding on to, despite actions that contradict them? And more importantly, where in your own life do your actions fail to match your words? Most of us believe we judge people fairly. We like to think we see the truth, that we can tell who is trustworthy and who is not. Yet beneath the surface of daily interactions, there are patterns so subtle we often miss them. These invisible dynamics quietly shape our lives, our relationships, even our failures. Here is one such pattern. When someone receives a small taste of power, authority at work, control in a relationship, even a minor advantage in a group, their true tendencies surface. A person who is kind only when powerless may suddenly become dismissive when in control. Another who seemed indifferent to recognition may reveal a hidden hunger for admiration once given the spotlight. What was invisible before now becomes undeniable. Power is like a magnifying glass. It enlarges what is already there. But power is not the only revealer. Pay attention to how people treat those they do not need, the waiter at the restaurant, the cleaning staff at the office, the stranger on the street. These moments often carry more truth than hours of conversation. The polite tone reserved for the boss evaporates when speaking to someone considered unimportant. In that shift, the mask slips, and you glimpse the real face. There is also the pattern of consistency. One generous act may be a performance. 10 over time reveal character. One cruel remark might be a mistake. Repeated cruelty reveals intention. Most of us, however, get caught in the drama of single moments and forget to look for the thread that connects them. If you begin to trace behavior across time, you will find the fabric of a person's soul more clearly woven. And do not forget the internal side of this truth. Consider your own life. When you are tired, stressed, or pressed for time, how do you treat others? Do you reveal patience or irritation, kindness or indifference? Your patterns, just like theirs, whisper the story of who you truly are. The danger lies in ignoring these invisible signs. When we dismiss them, we step into illusions, trusting words that will eventually collapse under the weight of reality. But when we begin to recognize them, something extraordinary happens. We stop living surprised by human behavior and start navigating with clarity. So pause for a moment. In your life right now, who is showing you their truth? Not through what they say, but through the invisible trail of actions they leave behind. Some truths are best carried in short, sharp sentences, the kind that strike the heart before the mind has time to argue. Let us shape this wisdom into a few unforgettable phrases you can hold on to when illusions threaten to cloud your vision. Words are smoke. Actions are fire. Power does not change people. It reveals them. Do not trust promises. Trust patterns. Character whispers in small choices long before it shouts in great ones. Each of these sentences condenses a lifetime of painful lessons into a single line. They are easy to remember, but difficult to ignore. And once they settle in your memory, they begin to act like lenses. Every conversation, every promise, every display of charm is filtered through them, making what is false easier to see. Think of the last time someone disappointed you. Did their actions contradict their words? Did you ignore a pattern because you wanted to believe in the promise? If you replay those memories through these phrases, the picture sharpens. What seemed confusing becomes painfully obvious. The signs were always there, you simply did not yet have the words to frame them. That is the power of these sentences. They do not just sound wise, they train your perception. They remind you in the heat of the moment to look beyond what is said and to pay attention to what is done. And perhaps even more importantly, they echo back to you in moments of self-reflection. When you declare an intention, these phrases ask, but what are you actually doing? The world is full of impressive words, political speeches, romantic vows, ambitious declarations, but most of it dissolves into nothing when tested. That is why you must carry these truths like weapons, to cut through the fog of charm and see reality for what it is. So the next time you hear someone say, "Trust me," let these sentences whisper in your mind. Trust patterns, not promises. When someone rises to power and their mask begins to slip, remember, power does not change, it reveals. And when you look in the mirror, do not ask what you intended to do. Ask what you did. Which of these truths strikes you most deeply right now? Here's where the reflection deepens. People are not only what they do, nor are they only what they say. The truth lies in the paradox between the two. We all wear masks, sometimes to protect ourselves, sometimes to hide, sometimes even to survive. But the paradox is this: while masks can deceive, they also reveal. Think about an actor on stage. Every role performed is a disguise, yet over time, something of the actor always seeps through. In the same way, when people craft their words carefully, they believe they are building a mask. Yet their actions, sooner or later, betray what the words were trying to conceal. This is why Machiavelli insisted on observing behavior when power shifts. It is in those pressured moments that the mask cracks, and a glimpse of the real person escapes. But here is the other side of the paradox. Even actions can mislead. One generous deed might be done for praise. One humble gesture might be a performance. If we isolate a single action, we risk being deceived. The truth, then, is not found in words alone, nor in actions alone, but in the tension between them, in the alignment, or lack thereof, across time. Consider this: when words and actions align, character is reinforced. A person who speaks of loyalty and consistently proves it becomes trustworthy. But when words and actions collide, the mask slips, and the contradiction reveals a deeper truth. The paradox is not a weakness of perception. It is the very arena where discernment grows. This is why true wisdom requires patience. Quick judgments cling to words or single actions. Deep discernment watches for patterns, observes the mask and the cracks within it, and accepts that truth is revealed not in isolated moments but across the arc of a life. Now turn this paradox inward. Ask yourself, what masks do you wear? When do your words and actions align, and when do they clash? Do you speak of values you rarely live? Do you promise to yourself things you never deliver? To confront this is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. For in embracing the paradox, you begin to live with greater integrity. You stop fearing the cracks in the mask and instead let your actions slowly sculpt a self that no longer needs disguises. So the paradox stands: masks hide, but they also reveal. The question is, are you willing to see and to be seen? Why does any of this matter? Why should you bother sharpening your vision, paying attention to patterns, and enduring the discomfort of seeing people as they truly are? The answer is simple yet profound. Clarity is freedom. When you learn to read character beyond words, you protect yourself from the slow erosion of trust. No longer do you invest years in relationships that are destined to collapse. No longer do you hand your loyalty to those who only wear virtue as a costume. Instead, you channel your time, energy, and affection toward people whose actions align with their words. That shift alone can save you from immeasurable pain. But there is more. Clarity also gives you confidence. How often have you second-guessed yourself after being betrayed? How often have you thought, maybe I should have known? With trained perception, those doubts diminish. You stop blaming yourself for being naive because you are no longer navigating blindly. You move with awareness, recognizing signals before they become disasters. And clarity does not just protect you from others, it transforms your inner life. The moment you start judging yourself by actions rather than intentions, you free yourself from illusions about who you are. No more comfort in empty promises to yourself. No more hiding behind someday. You begin to see clearly where you are strong and where you are still weak. This honesty hurts at first, but it also fuels growth. You cannot become who you wish to be if you refuse to see who you are right now. The reward of this clarity is not cynicism. It is strength. It allows you to build relationships on solid ground, to trust slowly but deeply, to cultivate friendships and partnerships with those who prove themselves through consistent behavior. It gives you the peace of knowing that you are no longer living in illusions. Picture this: a life where disappointment no longer blindsides you, where your trust is wisely placed, where your own character steadily grows because you live by the same standard you demand of others. That is the hidden reward Machiavelli was pointing toward. Not manipulation, not suspicion, but wisdom. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped listening to words alone and started living by the truth of actions? How much lighter, stronger, and freer would you become? To anchor everything we have explored, let us step back and see the larger structure at play. What Machiavelli hinted at is part of a broader framework that spans philosophy, psychology, and even moral tradition. At its heart lies one timeless principle: character is revealed through action. Aristotle, centuries before Machiavelli, taught that virtue is not an idea or a feeling but a habit. He insisted that we become just by doing just acts, courageous by practicing courage, generous by giving. In other words, who we are is not written in our desires, but in our repeated choices. Actions multiplied over time create character. Modern psychology reinforces this. Behavioral science shows us that intentions rarely predict outcomes. It is patterns of behavior that define who we are. James Clear, in his exploration of habit formation, echoes Aristotle without perhaps naming him. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. The framework is clear. Identity is not declared, it is enacted. Even spiritual traditions underline this truth. In the Christian scriptures, faith without works is called dead. In Stoicism, Epictetus warned that philosophy means nothing unless it is lived. Across cultures and centuries, the pattern repeats. Words and intentions are shadows, while actions are substance. Understanding this framework matters because it frees us from confusion. Too often we judge others and ourselves by isolated moments or eloquent promises. But when we see character as the accumulation of repeated actions, the fog lifts. One act may deceive, one word may mislead, but over time the truth of a person becomes undeniable. This perspective also reframes disappointment. When someone reveals a darker nature, we often feel shocked, betrayed, or even foolish. But with this framework, betrayal is not a sudden accident. It is the culmination of patterns we may have ignored. Painful, yes, but not inexplicable. The framework helps us recognize that life is not chaos, but a field of cause and effect. And here lies the opportunity. If actions reveal character, then we are never powerless. We can choose differently today. We can align words with deeds, intentions with execution. We can slowly sculpt ourselves into the kind of person we wish others could see. So let this framework become your compass. Judge less by words, more by patterns. Trust less in intentions, more in actions. And when in doubt, remember, who we are is always revealed in what we repeatedly do. We have walked through Machiavelli's insight, the illusions of words, the patterns of behavior, the paradox of masks, and the clarity that comes when you dare to see. Now the final question is not about others, it is about you. Are you willing to live without masks? Are you ready to let your actions speak so loudly that your words become almost unnecessary? Because here is the ultimate truth. The same principle you use to discern others is the one by which you will be judged. People may hear what you say, but they will trust or distrust you by what you consistently do. And this is not meant to condemn, but to liberate. It means that every day you wake up with the power to reveal a truer, stronger version of yourself, not through speeches or intentions, but through choices. This is the path to maturity, aligning your life so closely with your values that the mask is no longer needed. Imagine what kind of relationships you would build if you became that person, consistent, reliable, genuine. Imagine how different your inner life would feel if you stopped hiding behind someday and began to embody today the character you admire in others. Machiavelli was not offering us cynicism, but a sober key to freedom. If you want to know someone, watch what they do with power. And if you want to know yourself, watch what you do when no one is watching. That is the essence of truth. So let this be your challenge. The next time you are tempted to excuse yourself with good intentions, pause. Ask, what did I actually do? And when someone else's words charm you, ask, what do their actions reveal? If you begin to live this way, You will find yourself less entangled in disappointment and more anchored in reality. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever uncovered someone's true character by watching what they did, not what they said? Share your story in the comments. I read them, and they matter, because this channel is not about empty advice, but about building a community of honest seekers. If this message struck something in you, give this video a like and subscribe. Not for the sake of numbers, but so we can keep walking this path together, toward greater clarity, deeper strength, and the courage to live without masks.